The night was heavy with tension, but I felt a strange calm as I approached the dining room. Every step I took echoed in the hall, and the smell of candles and polished wood seemed almost ceremonial. Tonight wasn't just any night. Tonight was the night I had been waiting for, planning for, dreaming about for 3 long years. My parents sat at the head of the table, their smiles fixed firmly on my brother, the golden child, who stood proudly, basking in admiration. Every whisper, every nod, every clink of cutlery seemed to revolve around him, and everyone thought I was invisible, weak, harmless, a girl who could never make waves. But they were wrong. Oh, how wrong they were. For years I had watched silently, listened carefully, and documented everything. Every secret bank account, every hidden property, every deal made behind closed doors. They thought I was too insignificant to notice. They thought the golden child would always rise, and I would always remain the shadow. They never knew I was the storm waiting to break. I held the leather-bound box tightly in my hands. Inside were 3 years of secrets, proofs, contracts, statements, all meticulously collected. My brother's smug smile faltered slightly as my shadow crossed the doorway. He didn't notice the quiet confidence in my eyes, the years of planning resting in my hands. I had been the black sheep of the family, laughed at for my awkwardness, dismissed for my quiet nature, and underestimated at every turn. But tonight all of that would pay off. As I stepped into the room, all eyes turned toward me. My cousins, distant relatives, family friends, they all sensed that something had changed. I didn't say a word yet. I let the anticipation build. The silence was almost deafening. The golden child, who everyone admired, didn't notice the subtle shift in the air. I took a deep breath and placed the box gently on the sideboard. My hand lingered there for a moment as if to say, "What's inside will change everything." Dinner began. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and compliments from my brother poured in. He was charming, confident, untouchable. But I knew the truth. I had the power they didn't even suspect. Every smile hiding a lie, every toast concealing deceit. They had built their empire on secrets, and tonight, every secret would come to light. I seated myself at the table, my gaze fixed on my brother. "Do you think this is over?" I asked softly, my voice barely audible. He looked at me, confused, a hint of unease flickering across his face. For a moment the room seemed frozen. Everyone waited for me to speak again. And then I let them see a faint smile. A smile that promised that the quiet, underestimated girl had a plan that would shatter their world. I didn't just want revenge, I wanted justice. The golden child had taken so much from me. Recognition, opportunities, respect. He had thrived while I was overlooked. And he thought I was weak. But weak was just a mask. Behind it, I had built something stronger than anyone could imagine. The first course was served, but my mind was elsewhere. I watched my family, noting every gesture, every expression. My mother's pride, my father's approving nods, my brother's smug satisfaction. All were about to be stripped away in front of them. I quietly opened the box under the table, ensuring no one noticed. Inside, the evidence was neatly organized. Offshore accounts, hidden properties, canceled contracts, secret investments. All pointing to the truth no one wanted to admit. The fortune they assumed was untouchable, the power they flaunted, the empire they believed secure. It was all a lie, and I held the proof. I glanced at my brother again. His smile faltered, but he tried to maintain composure. He didn't know yet that the foundation of his world was about to collapse. Finally, I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice calm but firm. "I believe it's time everyone here knows the truth." The room went silent. Few nervous chuckles. My family thought I was bluffing, that I was making a scene for drama. But this was no bluff. I reached for the first document, and the room shifted with anticipation. The screen lit up, revealing what I had prepared. The undeniable proof that everything they thought was theirs wasn't. Every document, every account, every contract carefully projected for all to see. My brother's eyes widened. My mother froze. My sister gasped. The golden child, untouchable for so long, now stood in shock as the world he had built with lies began to crumble before him. The first part of my plan was set. The storm was coming. The empire would fall, and I would finally take what was rightfully mine. The first slide appeared on the massive 75-inch screen, and the room went completely silent. My carefully collected documents were now illuminated for everyone to see. Offshore accounts, hidden properties, canceled contracts, every secret laid bare. My brother's confident smile wavered. The golden child who had always been untouchable, admired by everyone, was now frozen in disbelief. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. I began walking them through each revelation calmly, almost methodically. "This," I said, pointing to a stack of papers, "is the $3 million they moved offshore last year without anyone knowing. And these contracts," I gestured to another pile, "canceled silently in your name, while I worked tirelessly to maintain the family's businesses." Gasps echoed through the room. My mother's hands trembled as she clutched her glass. My sister's eyes widened, tears forming at the edges. Even my grandmother, usually stoic and commanding, looked startled. The empire they had built on lies and deception was unraveling before their eyes, and it was all because I had quietly prepared for this moment. I paused, letting the tension settle. Silence was powerful, and I wanted them to feel every ounce of it. Then I continued. "You've all celebrated him, praised him, admired him, and assumed he was always the strongest. But what you didn't see, what you didn't know, is that the strength you ignored was here quietly building, waiting for the right time." I flipped to the next slide. A detailed ledger of every property, every offshore account, every hidden transaction, all perfectly documented and irrefutable. My brother's face drained of color. He tried to stand to regain some semblance of control, but the room's energy had shifted completely. One by one, I watched as their confidence crumbled. Friends and distant relatives exchanged nervous glances, whispers of disbelief spreading like wildfire. The golden child, the untouchable one, was now just another human, vulnerable and exposed. I allowed myself a small, controlled smile. The years of patience, of quiet observation, of unnoticed planning, were finally paying off. Every small insult, every moment I was dismissed, every time they assumed I could not see, it had all led to this moment. Then came the final reveal. The $10 million fortune, the one they had all assumed belonged to my brother, the one that had symbolized his power and control, was never his. It was mine, quietly preserved, carefully hidden, and finally exposed. The shock in the room was palpable. My mother gasped audibly, dropping her fork. My sister's scream was a sharp, piercing sound that would haunt the room for years. Even my father, usually so composed and unshakable, looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath him. I could feel the tension reaching its peak. Every eye was on me now, waiting for what I would do next. And I delivered. "I've been underestimated," I said slowly, deliberately, letting each word sink in. "Mocked, dismissed, ignored. But tonight you see the truth. Every fortune, every secret, every empire you thought was yours, it was never untouchable. And it was never beyond my reach." The room was in chaos. Family members whispered in shock. Some stared in disbelief. Some recoiled in horror. My brother's hand shook as he clutched the edge of the table, trying to regain composure, but it was too late. The golden child's reign had ended and the quiet girl they ignored had claimed victory. Every carefully placed piece of evidence had done its job. The IRS penalties, the lost contracts, the hidden debts, they were all undeniable. My family could no longer pretend that everything was perfect. The empire they had built on lies and false pride was crumbling before their eyes. I took a moment to look around the room, soaking in the shock, the fear, and the humiliation. This was the power of patience, planning, and quiet strength. I had waited, observed, and prepared for this moment, and now it was mine. As I closed the box, the final realization hit them. The quiet, underestimated girl, the one they all thought would never amount to anything, had outmaneuvered them completely. The golden child, celebrated and adored, was powerless. The suspense hung in the air like a thick fog. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The weight of revelation settled over the room, heavy and unrelenting. I had delivered justice, retribution, and vindication, all in one calculated strike. And just when they thought it couldn't get any worse for them, I revealed the final truth. Every public contract, every hidden asset, every bit of wealth they had assumed was theirs, was now legally and permanently in my name. The room went completely silent. I had taken everything, not out of spite but out of justice. The empire they had assumed would always belong to the golden child was now under my control. I stood tall, composed, and calm, knowing that the battle was won. The revenge was complete. And the lesson was clear. Underestimate me at your own peril. The room remained frozen, the echoes of revelation still hanging in the air. My brother's face, once confident and untouchable, now reflected shock, fear, and disbelief. He had never imagined that I could outmaneuver him, that the quiet girl he had dismissed could dismantle everything he had worked for. I slowly closed the final slide on the massive screen, the evidence shining brightly. Each document, each ledger, each secret had struck with precision. My parents, stunned, could barely form words. Cousins whispered in disbelief, distant relatives exchanged shocked glances, and family friends leaned forward, their curiosity turning into awe. I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice calm but resonant. This is not about revenge for the sake of hatred. This is about justice. For years you believed I was invisible, weak, incapable. Tonight you see that I am neither. I am the force you underestimated. The golden child's hand shook as he leaned against the table for support. Every ounce of pride he had flaunted over the years had crumbled in an instant. He had been celebrated, admired, and assumed untouchable, but he was human, fallible, and exposed. I allowed a faint smile to cross my lips, savoring the culmination of years of patience, planning, and careful observation. Every insult, every moment I had been dismissed, every slight and mockery, it had all led to this flawless execution. My grandmother, normally stoic and unyielding, immediately called for legal counsel. The family will had to be reviewed, rewritten, and clarified. My mother, who had always doubted me, now looked upon me with a mixture of fear and awe. Even my sister, who had once mocked me, could only stare in disbelief. I stepped away from the table, letting them absorb the finality of the moment. The empire they had believed secure, the wealth they assumed untouchable, and the reputation they had cultivated with pride, none of it was beyond my reach. Every secret, every hidden fortune, every contract had been revealed, and justice had been served. But my victory was not about humiliation alone. It was about reclaiming my identity, my power, and my freedom. I had always been underestimated, overshadowed, and overlooked. Tonight that changed. I was no longer the quiet girl in the corner. I was the architect of my own destiny, the master of my own fortune. I walked to the window, overlooking the city lights of Phoenix, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. 3 years of meticulous planning, observation, and quiet determination had led to this moment. Every document I had collected, every late night of research, every subtle move, all of it had built to this crescendo. The golden child, my brother, was reduced to disbelief and desperation. Friends and distant relatives murmured amongst themselves, trying to process the shock. The empire that had once seemed untouchable was now mine. And as they stared at me, they realized that underestimating someone like me was the gravest mistake they had ever made. In the days that followed, consequences rippled outward. Contracts were canceled, penalties were enforced, and the family's reputation suffered a blow that could not be repaired. The IRS investigated every misstep, lawyers scrutinized every hidden account, and distant relatives finally understood that the golden child's power had always been an illusion. I meanwhile moved forward. My gallery in Phoenix, once a modest space, became a symbol of independence, success, and resilience. Every artwork, every exhibition, every deal reminded me of the strength I had cultivated quietly while others mocked me. The revenge was not cruel, it was precise, calculated, perfectly executed. And in the aftermath, I realized that justice could be more satisfying than any act of retaliation. I had reclaimed what was mine, exposed the truth, and ensured that those who underestimated me learned a lesson they would never forget. And as I stood there reflecting on the perfect execution of my plan, I knew one thing. Strength often lies where no one expects it. The underestimated, the overlooked, the dismissed. They can rise with a power that leaves even the strongest speechless. Have you ever been underestimated or betrayed? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking revenge tales. Stay tuned. Our next story will be even more unbelievable.